Okay, let's just jump straight into it. Pastor John, I'll give this to you because I want to sort of pick up where you just left off. And it does deal with unforgiveness, but specifically in the area of adultery. How do you truly let go of unforgiveness when your spouse has been unfaithful, when there's been some serious past mistakes? In the area of infidelity, how do you truly let go of that?
There's, a lot of people say, I can't forgive, and I went through a couple of things that they often use because I can't forget, and it still hurts, all the rest. To me, the only proof of forgiveness, which again is about the future, is letting go. The only proof of forgiveness is moving on. So what you need to do, okay, I know it hurts. We've been in this really closely with some of the people in our world. I know it hurts, but you need to let go and move on in terms of your life. Okay, sometimes what's happened because adultery has come in and your spouse has hurt you and dreams have been destroyed, and sometimes that's the most painful part, is the dreams are gone, they're broken, and you feel like you've got nothing. You've got to start dreaming again. You've got to start to build your future. And as you do, as you dream again, as you build your future, as you do the things, there's people in your world that love you. And talk to those people and what they see about you that's so amazing, because sometimes you forgot yourself, and take steps that way. And as you take steps into your future, you'll recognize that you are an amazing person, and it's not that person that hurt you that defines your future, but you have a future. That's practical and real, and it works.
It's good. If at any time any of you guys want to jump in, just go for it. Otherwise, we'll change gears a little bit. Cool. All right. Great answer. I do want to change gears a little bit before we get to sex. And pick me to talk about this stuff. It's so awkward. Anyway, I want to pass this over to you, Pastor Janet. And this isn't a reflection of Pastor B. How do I get my husband to do more housework? I said, I'm the breadwinner, I come home, I clean the house, I make dinner, I do the laundry, etc. Sometimes I think the only thing he's good for is the occasional sex.
Well, I think as women, we are geared to be helpers, so we see kind of when someone needs help. But I think men are geared a little bit differently, and they might not see that someone needs help. I remember specifically one time when the twins were real small, and it was evening time, we had eaten dinner, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, he probably wants to have sex tonight, but I mean, the kids need baths, the kitchen needs cleaning up, and he's just sitting there watching TV. And I'm thinking, doesn't he see, he can help me? But sometimes I don't think they're geared that way. We are, and so we see it. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to ask him. I said, would you mind going and helping the twins get their bath? He said, oh, sure. He just hadn't thought about it. And so I think it's just the way, it helps the way we ask, just the way we couch it and just ask him, then the tone of voice, I think. And I think most husbands are willing to help. Yes, anyway.
Very, very good answer. And sometimes I just think we maybe don't see it. I think the way you ask, that's really good. Pastor Helen, I want to pass this one over to you. And it's got to do a little bit with the previous question about roles in the household. And this is a very specific question, but I think it's got some larger implications. But my husband and I have a role reversal in that he stays home and watches our two small kids while I go off to work. My husband is sometimes bitter, but I have more education than him, and he doesn't have marketable skills to get a good paying job. How do we deal with that?
Well, that is a challenge, because I think that stereotypically we think this is a role for men and this is a role for women. But we know several couples quite closely that is exactly how they operate. And I have to admit, at first I went, okay, because I thought, that is really hard. I didn't think it was wrong, but I thought about John doing that. It would be very, very difficult for him to do it in that way. But I've watched. It's actually a niece of mine, and And they've made it managed it very well, but part of it, I think, is understanding that that is just a reality, and so one person can earn a better income, and so that is actually a very practical thing to do when you're getting established and things like that. But it's more about honoring the position and honoring them for the hard work that they do, and I think that it's tougher. I think it is tougher for a man in general to be in that role, but I think they can make it really well. And if we as women celebrate and are appreciative and honoring, not diminishing, because I think sometimes when there's that bitterness can kind of come in there, that's more his issue than her issue. That her work is to celebrate him and to encourage him, but for him, that he needs to deal with some of that on the inside, recognize what he's doing has immense value. I used to think actually back the other way. John was becoming a dentist. I thought, wow, what he's doing is so meaningful. All I'm doing is staying at home with the kids and washing clothes and floors and feeling like that wasn't as important as having a DR in front of your name. So I felt very insecure, and that was my issue. It wasn't John made me feel insecure. I felt insecure in the fact that I didn't have a degree and so I too had to deal with that because I was a little bit bitter. Well, I got pregnant, I didn't go to school, I stayed home with babies, and that I realized I was just robbing from my own future and our future together. I had to come to grips with that, and that all the other stuff didn't matter as much as knowing that I had great value in my children's life and in my marriage.
Along the way, just to continue to reevaluate with each other and then just be sure and keep the communication open so that you can keep that as clear as possible, and it's easier for each other to keep their hearts clean.
Very good. All right, Pastor B, here it comes. We have actually had 2 questions about people just living together prior to being married. This one's a particularly tricky one. I'm having a baby with my boyfriend and we are living together. Do we need to get married? I see so many people who have gotten divorced because they got married just because they were having a baby. This makes me a little apprehensive.
Thanks. Well, obviously, kind of got the cart before the horse there. I think that we need to have final authority in our life. For Janet and I, it's God's Word. He's smarter than we are. He's wiser than we are. He set things up in a particular way for a reason. And I don't think because someone's having a baby is necessarily the right reason for them to get married, but certainly they shouldn't be living together because it's one of the guidelines that God has set up. And even though it may not be an answer that someone wants to hear, if you do things God's way, there's a blessing in it. And so I would suggest, hey, you shouldn't be sleeping in the same bed, under the same roof until you're married, and then work on that relationship and do everything you can to make the relationship healthy, applying the kind of things that John and Helen have shared last night and today, and then get married if that's the right thing to do. But to just get married because there's a child there and you don't have the other things in order, you're not doing them right, it's not a guarantee that the relationship's going to work. So
it's good. Very good. Very nice. Pastor John, this is a similar question to that. Just a little different vein, I guess. Is it okay to live together as a man and wife if we both... is it okay to live together, not married, but because we don't want to get married because of past divorces we both had?
No.
I agree. Next one. Okay. I don't think we need to add any more to that. Man, I really gave you an easy one there. All right. Well, let's just go to sex. Okay. Here we are. Let's start. These are really good questions. Pastor John, I'll give this one back to you because you just did an easy one there. How can I get my hubby to want sex as much as I do? I don't think he understands that when he denies me, I feel unwanted.
That's a great question. And it comes back to what Helen started talking about, like what's normal. Well, any question about, okay, what about our sexuality? It's only going to be solved by the two of you sitting down and being very, very vulnerable and transparent and coming up with a plan. Okay, so that would be one of the things where often a couple will sit down because there's pain. I'm feeling rejected, I'm feeling hurt. And so I sit down and we have a confrontation and we talk and oh, we're so lovey, everything's great. My question is, what's your plan? And do you have a plan to go forward from that? So she's saying, how do I get my hubby to want to have sex with me? Well, why doesn't he? What's the reason? Often men, actually the biggest sex organ is between your ears, it's your brain. And it could be, there's many reasons, but one of the ones that's not that unusual is in marriage, a lot of men don't feel like they're performing very well. And fear of not performing will shut a guy down. Like, actually shut him down, if you know what I mean. The opposite from up.
I think you could be a bit more clear.
He has a tough time getting an erection.
That was my fault.
Because his head goes to, I'm going to fail. His head goes to, it's not working for me. I've had struggles, and fear is the greatest enemy against a healthy sexual relationship, and he's not going to solve it on his own. And if you are the guy in the room, you need to do what Helen said, which is be open and honest and transparent. The fact is that when you got married, you owned each other's sexuality, not just your own. Now the two of you, you own both his and hers, and he owns both yours and his. And you're going to have to sit down and work it out. See, if I can enlarge on this a little bit, one of the mistakes and kind of the lies, the myths that our world perpetrates is that before you get married, you got to try out the machinery. Why? Because you got to see if the chemistry works. What do you mean by that? You got to see if you really have that sexual excitement for each other. And if you do, what about that? Well, then you're okay. You shouldn't. I agree with what Bayless has said about it. But the fact is, there's no such thing as a marriage where it's going to be summer all your relationship long. You're going to have times of, you're going to have to figure this out. There's a struggle. It's not going to be the same, and it's going to make you stronger and closer if you will work through it. So don't run away from it. You've got to sit down and you've got to have that difficult conversation, and you've got to put a plan together where you can begin to work forward. Let me give you an example. A young couple comes to us. They've been married for 10 years, and they're at just wit's end, and there's so much pain going on. What's the problem? Finally, they spurt it out, and he cannot perform in their sexual relationship. And she feels like, I must be a terrible woman. I can't even excite my husband. And he feels like, I'm not even a man, because so much of his malehood is tied up to his performance, sexuality. So what do? The answer isn't that difficult. Really, the problem is between your ears. And when you got your eyes on yourself, when your thinking, guy, is on, it doesn't work, I can't perform, it won't work. In other words, you got your eyes on yourself. It's not going to work. So here's what you do. And give them a prescription. Go and set up the most romantic night you've ever had. Okay, go to a hotel or in your house, set it up, everything perfect, and then go to bed together. And I only have one thing I want you to do. And I'm talking to the husband. I said, I want you to bring your wife to the most amazing, phenomenal time she's ever had. He looks at me, but I got the problem, not her. I know. That's all I want you to do. Just satisfy her. Well, can you do that? Yeah, but it's me got the problem, not her. But can you do that? Yes. Okay, then just go do that. In other words, he got his eyes off himself. And he goes, and you'll get the phone call the next day. We had the best sex we've ever had. Why? It's simply get your eyes off yourself. Sex is giving, not getting.
Wow, brilliant. You know what's so brilliant about this time is being able to talk on this level, in this context, and I think the world comments on this stuff, but we don't always get to. That's brilliant. We're going to jump even deeper into this right now, and Pastor Helen, I'm going to give this over to you, and I appreciate people's honesty that they've asked these questions, so I think we should, at least have a comment, especially in our world, in our culture. Here we go. All right, I don't normally go red. Is it a sin to fantasize about other people when making love to your spouse? Is it okay to role play if your wife is okay with it?
I got chill. I feel like Bayless. Thank you.
I think it points to a greater picture of our
It is.
culture.
It is. It's actually. We live in people think it's being very liberated sexually to just kind of see how far we can go without crossing a line, and I think that's constantly the danger that we have in relationship, because our heart should always be turned towards one another. And I believe that the Bible talks about, if you think about being with someone else, it's as much as having done it, and that our relationship is always to be, my heart, I always want it to be turned towards John, and I want his heart to always be turned towards me. And I think that often because we live in a very sexualized culture, we are constantly inundated with imagery, and I'm going to go here because I didn't read the book. Trust me, I didn't read the book, but I was shocked when I went to Costco or other books, and it's this heaps and heaps, like zillions of books, a little bit of this one book, but one called 50 Shades of Grey, and it was all over, and don't go and check it out. It's just a book anyhow, but it's just about this. A lot of people think it's just liberating for women to read about this, and liberating, but it's a very negative picture of what a relationship looks like between a man and a woman. And yet because we haven't turned our hearts towards God and towards truth and towards each other, we're going and looking for something out there when everything we need is between each other. And the more you feed your relationship with one another, the more you will starve the need to look for anywhere outside. A lot of people think sex with one person for the rest of your life, as John said, that seems boring. No, not if your heart's turned and love grows. Like I said yesterday, the path of the righteous grows brighter and brighter. It's going to be more towards one another. But if you live in this place of trying to straddle the fence, but can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? I want to do this, and everyone else is saying, because they're listening to Hollywood or whatever, I'm not Hollywood, but all of the voices of opinion out there, but they're speaking out of brokenness, not out of health. And as Pastor Bayless said already, there has to be a final authority, and to us that's the Word of God, and it promises me that my body is not my own, it belongs to my husband, and his body is not his own, it belongs to me, and that there's joy and there's pleasure and there's blessing in that. So I'm going to always turn it towards John, and he's going to always turn it towards me. And so when you say, is it wrong to have fantasy? I believe it is. I would be devastated if I thought every time we were together he's fantasizing about someone else. That's hurtful. I don't really understand the spectrum of role-playing. I understand possibly what they're meaning, but again, I feel like it's inviting other things into the bedroom, where it's sacred and it's holy, and everything we need is provided within the way God built us and instructed us. And I know that's a wide berth around that, but I think that do it God's way, the best way, and it's kind of like God says about tithing. Prove me. And he's given you everything you need to bless you. He already did that within your sexuality. You don't need the world telling you and inviting the world into your bedroom. God's already there and will bless you.
As we're talking about this, Pastor B, I'll give this one over to you. And it's quite simple, and it's kind of along the same lines, but a little different. What can't I do with my spouse in bed?
The Bible's silent on a number of things, oral sex, et cetera, but we do have one law of the New Covenant, and it covers everything, even our sexuality. It's the law of love. And I don't know if it was John or Helen that said it, but love gives, lust demands. Love is never going to require your partner, your husband or wife to do something that violates their conscience. And even if it's something that you would like to try or something that you desire, if the other person's uncomfortable with it, if it violates their conscience in any way, you're stepping outside of the law. And it is that law of love. So it needs to go, we need to sex in the relationship, it needs to be about husband, it needs to be about our wife and fulfilling them. Wife, it needs to be about our husband. But again, we need to consider the other person's conscience. And the truth is, when it's not just about us getting what we want, but we want to fulfill the other person, we end up being fulfilled. You can't give without reaping. And so, in answer to that, I would say that you just need to abide within the framework of the law of love, and you'll be okay.
Good. Very good. Pastor Dan, I'll give this one over to you, but I would like to actually hear some comment from a couple others if you want to. Right now, we all know, I guess, marriage is the marriage institution is sort of shifting in today's day and age. And this is specifically about gay marriage. Where should a Christian stand with gay marriage without being seen as judgmental of friends who are in that lifestyle? It's a very tricky question because it is something we fight against in order to protect our marriages that are between a man and a woman, or what should our stance as a Christian be about that? And I'd invite comments from all you guys if you want.
I would say, first of all, God calls us to love every person. And so definitely from our hearts, we love people. But I think in our own self, we have a standard that God has, like you said, the final decision. Everything that we do, we can base, we have a guideline in the Word of God. And definitely God says that sex is to be between a man and a woman. And otherwise we're going outside his guidelines. And really he is the one who knows best. Daddy knows best. And so that's how I would look at it. And
we are never going to win anyone to Jesus by pointing our finger and condemning people. We need to preach Christ. And when Christ comes into a home, when Christ truly comes into a life, he changes them. I was very messed up sexually, before I got saved. And I mean, when Jesus came into my life, he took me just as I was, a Class A mess, giving my life to Christ in a street mission, a drug addict I was in trouble on a lot of different levels. And, it's been a process. I mean, there was stuff I didn't know, certain things, and I began to learn it as I learned the Word of God, and God dealt with me in a loving way, and he's still, I'm a work in progress like everyone else is. And so when it comes to homosexuality, there's just, God's wiser. There's boundaries just like there is, with a heterosexual, someone that has that desire. And I just have to say, do you love Jesus more? Jesus is the issue. If we can preach Christ to people and people ask Christ in their life, he'll fix all that stuff.